Welcome back to the Bryan Devore Connection. I'm your host, Bryan Devore. With me today is my friend Mark Hill with Pacific Divorce Management. Mark, how are you doing today?
Doing well, thank you, Bryan.
Good. So we were talking before we came on camera about the last time I actually saw you in person was before the pandemic. But we did a video right when the pandemic started, sort of about finances through the pandemic. But I'm glad we're able to do this in person now.
It's a pleasure, isn't it, to be seeing people face to face.
Right, for sure. So tell us a little bit about what Pacific Divorce Management does.
Well, we are financial divorce consultants. So basically we work on the financial aspects of divorce. The company works exclusively as a neutral. In other words, we literally work with the couple to help them essentially settle all their financial issues in the divorce. My role can be as a mediator or as a neutral financial in a model called collaborative divorce that I helped develop maybe 25 years ago.
Got it. Well, and I've appreciated the fact that I've been able to refer clients to you, and they've really benefited from having that neutral financial, because in a divorce situation, so many times it does come down to the money, and so to have that is super valuable.
And we treat it as a problem to be solved, not a battle to be fought.
Right.
And try to take the children into account to make sure that their needs are met.
So speaking of troubles and issues and things like that, we wanted to talk a little bit about the biggest mistakes that you see people make when it comes to divorce. So give us some examples.
Well, the first biggest mistake people make is not thinking about how they're going to divorce. They get scared. They hear that their spouse wants a divorce, or they decide they want a divorce. What's the first thing on their mind? I need an attorney, and I need an aggressive attorney who will fight for my rights. The problem with that is, if you go down that road, do you think that your spouse is going to hire a milquetoast? No, they're going to go for the most aggressive attorney too, because they will hear of the reputation of the person you hired. So I ask people to take a step back. What's the goal here? Think about outcome. How's your relationship going to be with your spouse? If you have children, guess what? You have a relationship with them probably for the rest of your life, whether you like it or not. If you're lucky, there'll be marriages, and if you're really lucky, there'll be grandchildren. And you want to be able to be in the same room. So thinking about how you divorce before jumping onto the adversarial approach, which is basically, I get my lawyer, you get your lawyer, we'll fight it out. If we can't agree things, we'll have a judge decide everything.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we don't want it to be having animosity. You know, I know through my divorce, we decided we were going to, do it amicably. We share kids. And it makes a huge difference versus people I see who don't do that.
It really does. I have seen cases where it's literally a decade later and the couple are fighting over the last thing left to talk about, which is the children.
Right.
And they do not benefit from that.
No, not at all. What other mistakes do you see people making?
Deciding financial issues on a piecemeal basis as opposed to thinking of how it fits into the whole picture. I also see people taking the approach that there's something that is sacrosanct. I've got to have the house. I must have my pension. I worked for it. Well, understood, those things are important to you, but how do we approach this in a way that you get what you want, but also your spouse can get some things of what they want too, because that's the basis of a successful deal, is one where you both get something of what you want. I always say to people, you won't get everything you want in this. I can promise you that. But I can also promise you that we will talk about everything you want. And so you will have your day.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I heard a saying that, the most successful divorce is when both parties walk away disappointed.
I hate that, but it's true.
Yeah.
There is just, and the problem is that two households cost more than one. There's this part of the code that says essentially each spouse is entitled to the marital standard of living. And they anchor on that. My Lord, I'm entitled to, the vacations, the kids are entitled to the riding lessons. There's another line at the bottom of that says if it's available. And it seldom is. And usually divorce is a shared sacrifice. And often the children have to be a part of that too, even though we don't want that to be the case.
Right. So talking about money and how it comes into play, what's the biggest misunderstanding you see when it comes to money in a divorce?
Looking at top-line values, not understanding tax consequences of assets you would be receiving, trying to offset pension money against a a house equity, for example. They're not apples to apples. Can we do it? Yes. I will tell you, though, one of you will be ripped off. I just can't tell you for 20 years which one it'll be.
Yeah.
So again, as long as you understand that, that's fine. But those are the kind of problems we have. Things like a pension. If someone's earned a pension and it has a cash value on the statement, that's not what it's valued at. It's a future cash flow that needs to be valued today. We do that work. And so we know what we're dealing with when we start to divide retirement accounts.
Right. And then when it comes to the house, the house is obviously one of the biggest assets that people typically have. How do you see that coming into play with a divorce?
The house in the last 2 or 3 years has saved many divorces.
Really?
The equity in it has made it possible to essentially get the deal done because there has been so much equity that we've developed over recent years in San Diego County. I see that changing a little bit. You and I were talking before the show about a client I'm working with who just had their house, their second home, drop out of escrow. And that really changes the picture. We were expecting to get a lot of cash to take care of a whole bunch of different things that had actually been agreed. We'd spent the money already.
Wow.
It fell out yesterday. So again, now we've got to reapproach this. So how do you perceive the market going? It seems like it's getting a little toppy to me, but I felt that for maybe a year.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time right now. Because interest rates have gone up so much so quickly, I think some buyers are putting a little bit of a pause on their decisions. We still have very little inventory, although we talked about it's coming up a little bit, but it's still historically low inventory. Rates are still very good. They're just not what people were used to. We have recency bias. So I think that we're sort of maybe plateauing a little bit, but still people will have the equity that they've developed over the last couple of years for quite a while, which helps go towards the divorce situation. Yeah,
I mean, when you talk of interest rates being high, my first house in 1978, I had a 13% mortgage on.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And I recall getting a call at my office with a guy offering us an 11.5% mortgage. And I recall jumping in my car, driving home and saying to my wife, honey, we have to grab it. They'll never be lower. Because that's how it felt.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. So what other mistakes do you see people making in a divorce?
Emotional attachment is probably the biggest problem once you've decided on your course. If you enter into some kind of alternative dispute resolution like mediation or collaborative, you will have the resources available to help you do a deal. But I talk about settlement readiness on 3 levels. Each of the couple has to be ready to settle their divorce. From a legal standpoint, do they understand how the law would impact each of these issues they're concerned about? From a financial standpoint, very common to see people in divorce basically, no one gets married and immediately says, you know what, I'll do the cooking, you take the garbage out, I'll take the kids to school. But over time, the division of labor occurs where there's an imbalance of power, an imbalance of knowledge that can lead to an imbalance of power. So whoever did the money in the marriage has more knowledge of what the situation is. We need to educate the other spouse so that he or she can be a participant in it. So getting a level playing field around the money is important, but there has to be emotional settlement readiness too. Are they both ready to let this marriage go? Are they done punishing each other? And so approaching it with the resources to help you deal with the emotional, the financial, and the legal is probably what I would urge people to try to make sure they have in place before they go down that road.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot when it comes to divorce. I know in mine there was, but it can be so complex. So having a professional like yourself makes all the difference in the world. Mark, thank you very much for coming and sharing your knowledge.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All of Mark's information is on the screen, so you'll have that. And feel free to reach out to him if you have any questions as you are going through the divorce process, thinking about it, what have you. He's truly an expert at what he does. Thank you again for watching.